UK retail sales unexpectedly rose in July, rising 0.3% on the monthly estimate, which was originally for a contraction of 0.1%, which would have been the first decline since April, but that has not been the case. I'm joined down the line today by Michael Hewson, Senior Market Economist at CMC Markets, to give me some more insights into these surprising results. Mr. Hewson, thank you for joining me. Firstly, UK retail figures out today rose for retailers. Why was this rise so unexpected, and what were the reasons for the original predictions?
Well, yeah, they were a pleasant surprise, and I think the reason for the original prediction was the fact that we saw some, very poor growth figures earlier this month of minus 0.7 for the second quarter. So I think the expectation was fairly low for retail sales figures, given the fact that that was also the month that we had. It was in the wake of the Golden Jubilee celebrations and the poor weather, and the expectation was essentially that consumers would stay at home and pare back their spending. I think what was more important, really, was the actual upgrade in the June figure. That was upgraded from 0.1 to 0.8, which sort of rather begs the question, how could economists get it so wrong? And I think they've really underestimated or overestimated, if you like, the negative effect that the Jubilee celebrations had on the retail sales numbers.
I see, and some economists have put this rise in sales largely down to the Olympics hosted in London, even though retailers reported no impact from the first 2 days of the Games. Would you agree?
No, I don't. Because as you just said, the period only covers the first 2 days of the Games. I think we're going to have to wait for next month to find out what the net effect on the retail sector of the Olympic Games was. But I think more importantly than that, we did have in June the European Championships 2012, and we also had the Wimbledon fortnight. So, I think with those two sporting events, and along with heavy discounting by retailers, as well as a fallback in inflation, I think that's prompted a lot of people to dip back into their wallets and spend a little bit of money. I think what's also quite interesting, though, Jennifer, is the fact that internet sales grew quite significantly. Year on year, they were up 14%, and I think that's largely as a result of the fact that you can get a lot of goods and services now a lot cheaper on the internet than you can get actually in the retail stores.
There have been a real mixed bag of economic data released from the UK this week. UK unemployment fell yesterday to its lowest level in almost a year, while taxes and inflation rose. What has the reaction to this mixed bag of data been? Well,
that's been one of the questions that's been vexing economists all of this week. We've seen, obviously, GDP, the initial GDP figure come out earlier this month of minus 0.7, and yet against that, we've had unemployment actually falling back, which, when you've got a very, a severely contracting economy, you expect unemployment to start rising, not falling. And I think what that has done is it's thrown into sharp focus the unreliability of the GDP numbers that are basically published by the Office of National Statistics. And we've already seen the likelihood that next week we could well see a revision higher in the UK second quarter GDP numbers of quite a significant amount. Certainly the retail sales figures bear that out, as do the revisions to the construction figures. So, I think next week we could well see that GDP for the UK could actually come in around about minus 0.4. That's still quite, that's still not great, but it's certainly not as bad as initial estimates appear to have confirmed.
And because of this, do the latest retail figures suggest that the UK's recession may not be as deep as first thought?
Yeah, I certainly think that is definitely the case. When you actually look at the PMI data that we've seen out of the UK all of this year, it's coming way above French and German PMI data, yet according to initial estimates of German and French GDP, the German economy grew in the second quarter by 0.3%, and the French economy was flat. Yet, even though our PMIs have outperformed in pretty much every single month since the beginning of the year, the UK economy is in recession. That just does not seem right to me. So I think that the Office of National Statistics has had quite a bit of history for the unreliability of its GDP numbers, and we could actually find that in subsequent revisions, this second quarter may not have been anywhere near as bad as initial estimates appear to have indicated.
I see. Lastly, and what are your predictions for the UK retail sector and the UK economy in the short and the long term?
Well, in the short term, I certainly think that the Olympics could well have had a positive effect. We'll only know that for certain, I think, when we see the figures out for next month in August. Going forward, I still think things are going to remain very tight. Inflation, I think, may well have bottomed. We saw earlier this week that economists completely misread the inflation figures. They were expecting a fall, and inflation actually rose. We've got the potential for higher food prices going forward, given the drought in the US and obviously the flooding in the UK earlier this year, which has affected food prices. And crude oil prices are already starting to edge up, and that's not really been factored in the inflation figures either. So I certainly think that the headwinds are, that they remain on the horizon. Really depends essentially if Europe deteriorates next month. I don't think there's going to be a quick and easy solution to that. I think things are going to be difficult, but I certainly don't think they're going to be as bad as a lot of people think they will be.
Thank you, Mr. Hewson, for some really interesting points there. Tomorrow on Dukascopy TV, we have an interview looking at the economic data releases and information that may be affecting markets next week. Until then, have a great evening.